So the x, what do we know about the x? Is it greater than or is it less than? How do we know it's less than? Because the numbers are, they're smaller. So we're going to put less than. Is it equal to?
No.
How do we know if it's equal to or not? It's an open or closed dot. So because it is an open dot, it's not going to have the equal to bar at the end of it. And then what comes next? The -3. So then if you look, this is what you should have written. X is less than -3. You don't have to, but if you are looking at this from your, like in the aspect of on the final, you're using your notes. If you don't have the number line drawn, all you're going to see is X is less than -3. Some of you probably don't need to look at this one because it's pretty easy, but it's just a suggestion. Okay. You could also, I was asked this a couple of times yesterday off of yesterday's assignment. The order doesn't matter. Either one of them is accepted. But if you're going to write it as X is less than -3, or I'm sorry, if you're going to switch it so that the number's first, you need to remember to switch the inequality. So -3 is greater than X. You can't just keep the less than symbol. You have to remember to flip the whole thing. Like the little part is pointing towards the X. All right, next problem. We're going to solve 2 parentheses 4x minus 1 equals 46. Okay, what would be our first step? Distribute. On the quiz that you guys took last week, some of you, whenever it said to give the properties, you forgot to give the properties. So what did I just do with that 2 right there? Distribute. So if it asks for the properties, we're looking for that word, distributive property. What is 2 times 4x? 8x. What's 2 times -1? Don't forget the negative. -2 equals 46. Okay, now what would I need to do? Ooh, that green's hard to see, isn't it? Oh, I guess it's not too bad. So we're trying to get the 8x by itself. So you need to get rid of the -2 or do the opposite of a -2 so that it cancels. So what cancels with the -2? +2. So what property did I just use? The addition property. You're adding to both sides. Oops, I can't spell. Bless you. So the 8x stays. 46 plus 2 is 48. Okay. What's the opposite of multiply? Divide. Find my blue. There it is. So I'm going to divide by 8 and divide by 8. So what property is that? Division. Okay, what is 48 divided by 8? 6. Okay. The next one that I want to do that you guys did while I was gone, that I definitely want to make sure that we understand how to do is it's called literal equations. A literal equation is when you have more than one variable and you're going to solve for one of the variables. So if we look, if we have 2x minus 12y equals 60. And then if I said solve for y. This is actually the most common type of literal equation that you will solve because it's getting it from one form into slope-intercept. If you think about slope-intercept form, it's in the form y equals mx plus b, where the y is, oh, sorry, you can't see that, where the y is by itself. So if we look at this problem and I want to solve for y, that tells you exactly what variable to circle. So I'm trying to get this, oops, my red's not working. Oh, there it goes. This by itself. So if I want to get that term by itself, what would I do with this 2x? I would move it over, but how do I move it over? Divide it. Not divide. Amber said it. It was subtract. You need to subtract. So we're not trying to split the 2 and the x up. We're trying to move that whole term. So you need to subtract the 2x. 2x minus 2x cancels. And then you would subtract 2x on this side. Can I subtract 60 and 2x? No. Would it make it 58? No, they do not both have an x, so they're not like terms. If we're trying to get it in the form mx plus b, which term would I write first? The 2x or the 60? The 2x. So I would do negative 12y. I'm just bringing that down. Bring down your equals. And we said we're going to write the 2x first. Would it be a positive 60 or a negative 60? Negative. Positive. That's okay. Positive 60. So keep in mind the negative is with the 2 and there was no sign in front of the 60, so we know it's a positive. Any questions on that step? I know it's weird solving for equations when you don't actually have numbers everywhere and you have multiple variables. So what are we trying to get by itself? So we're trying to get the y, right? So we need to get rid of the negative 12 that's in front of the y. Yes, that 12 is negative, but we're not actually subtracting. What are we doing? Multiplying. So we need to divide. Where do I need to divide it though? It's actually both. You have to do it to every term. Kind of like whenever you distribute, you have to distribute into every term. When you are dividing like this, you have to do it to everything. So that would cancel. So you're left with y equals. What's a negative divided by a negative? Positive. What is 2 divided by 12? It would be 1/6. Or 2 divided by 12. 2 divided by 12 is 0.17. Keep in mind for tests, sometimes they might write it as a fraction, sometimes they might write it as a decimal. You just need to be able to identify it as either one. Then what is 60 divided by negative 12? 5. Is it positive 5 or negative 5? Negative 5. Whoops, I just cut right through that. Let's write our steps that we did. What did we do first? We subtracted. Then what did we do? Division. And remember, and I would put a star right here for yourself if you're looking at it during the final or during whatever part, is divide to all terms. Is anybody still writing that, or can I change it to the next problem? Going once, going twice. Okay, we're gonna do another literal equation because I know this is probably what y'all are gonna struggle with the most. So area of a square, does anybody remember, or area of a rectangle? Does anybody remember how to find the area of a rectangle? Go ahead.
Don't you multiply like all the sides?
Length times width. So if I gave you this equation and I said solve for W. Solve for the width. So that's what you're going to circle. So how would I get rid of the length? So it's not a number, but it's the same concept as if it was just a 7 or a 12 or a 2. Would I subtract?
Divide it.
You have to divide because right now it's multiply. So what's the opposite of multiply? Divide. So I would divide by L. Divide by L. Sorry, that's a weird looking L. It looks like
It looks like an E.
it does look like an E. Sorry, I'll write it as different. I guess it doesn't really matter. I'm just really OCD. Sorry. So we'll divide by L, divide by L. So then what is my final equation solved for W?
A equals W.
No. A
Y
divided by L. So it's A divided by L equals W. So really what that's saying is if you were looking for your width, if your area, or if you were given your area and your length, you would just take your area and divide by whatever the length is, and it will give you the width. So if I told you that we had an area of, somebody give me a random number, 12. And I had a length of, somebody give me another random number, 6. Okay, so now let's plug that into the equation we just created. Where does the area go? On the top. So I would do 12 divided by 6 is going to give us our width, which is 12 divided by 6 is 2. So 2 would equal our width. W equals 2. They'll do this a lot for like area of a triangle. What's the area of a triangle? Anybody remember that one? Yeah, so it's area equals 1/2 the base times the height. So the only difference is there would be a 0.5 or a 1/2 in front of that. That's the only difference between a rectangle and a triangle.
What, so the rectangle would have 0.5?
No, if we were talking about a triangle. Okay, all right, we're gonna do one more. We're gonna do one that is solving an inequality. And then I will let y'all start correcting your quiz from last week. Or from the week before Thanksgiving. Okay, what's the first step we do? Okay, circle the variables. Are they on the same side or opposite? Opposite. So that means you have to do the opposite to one of them. Do you want to move the 4x or move the 3x?
Move the 4x.
I like moving the smaller one, so I like moving the 3x. 3x minus 3x cancels, which is what we wanted. And then I need to subtract it from the other side. What is 4x minus 3x? X or 1x. Bring down your negative 12. Bring down your less than or equal to. Bring down your 1. So then circle your variable again. What's the opposite of negative 12? Or subtract 12 is add 12 and add 12. So x is less than or equal to, what is 1 plus 12?
50. 57.
Yes, sir.
Is your internet down?
I don't know, I'm not using internet right now. 1 plus 12 is 13. Now, I am going to do it the other way just to prove the fact that it gives you the same answer. So I'm going to this time move the 4 instead. Bless you. Okay, so we're going to do it again, same steps. The only thing that we're going to do different is move the 4 since somebody suggested that. So if I want to move the 4, I would do subtract 4x and subtract 4x. So it would be negative 12 is less than or equal to, what is 3x minus 4x? Negative 1x. 3 minus 4. Huh? 3 minus 4. If I give you $3, but I owed you 4, I still owe you $1 more. That's why I like moving the smaller, because you usually don't have to worry about those negatives. Okay, now what's the next step? If I want to get this by itself, what would I do with that plus 1? Subtract 1, subtract 1. Negative 12 minus 1. Negative 13. There's an extra step here. So what would I need to do next? Divide by what? Negative 1. And divide by negative 1. What is our rule when solving inequalities? If you divide both sides by a negative, you have to flip it. So it becomes, and you probably want to write a note, divide by a negative, flip the sign. It still has the or equal to, don't forget to keep that part on there. Bring down the x. What is negative 13 divided by negative 1? Positive 13. So that's why I always, in this first step, I like to move the smaller number. Notice how many negatives we had to deal with throughout the whole problem, and you also had to remember to flip the sign. So that's why I typically try to move the smaller one. It should give you the same answer either way. Notice the 13, or you could say the alligator is eating the 13. Hopefully you'll know how much I love the alligator. Just kidding. So it's x is less than or equal to 13, or 13 is greater than or equal to x. Notice the small part is still towards the x. Okay, any questions on that one?